No, it's a really exciting scene just because there's that nervous energy, just from we're not sure where it's going to stop, where you're going. So, and it's there's so much. It's funny because as we're talking about this, there's so many scenes about people going into places, and Ed has there's so many scenes of people sort of standing outside, kind of waiting to be invited into a place. And I wondered, because that feels in some way like metaphorical, almost that kind of Western thing of, you have to be invited into somebody's home. And that's an odd kind of almost formalism in the film.
Yeah. I don't know if that was conscious or not. I wasn't. I mean, what I really wanted to do was use as just the camera was used in a very subjective way, and I wanted the audience, like the shot you were talking about with Noah. The reason I wanted it to start, the movie starts, as you know, with this sort of the camaraderie of that was really in a way to sort of dramatize the metaphor of the department and how they relate to each other, and there really is an NYPD football team. I thought it was an interesting way to start the movie and use that as sort of a plot point that we harken back to later, and then start introducing the family. And then we get into the plot of the movie, which is when he gets the call. And I really wanted to I wanted the audience to feel like they were in it with Noah's character. So that's why, and there was a lot of stuff like that. I was using a subjective camera so the audience can feel like they're not outside watching the movie, they're actually inside of it, hopefully experiencing the way that the characters are. And that was the intention.
Well, I'll go to questions with you. If you guys can stand up and identify yourself when the microphone comes to you. Questions out here at all? Or?
This is a question for Edward Norton.
Can you identify? I'm sorry.
Yes, Aaron Cullen, Timmins Daily Press. Although your character is the one, I think, who's supposed to be, I thought, trying to do the right thing, at least legally, I found at times that I was still fought against the feeling that I never really was sure that he was doing the right thing by not protecting his family. And I wondered whether when you were developing the character, preparing the character, whether you questioned some of the decisions that your character made.
I guess the way I would answer that is I don't. I think that when you talk to, certainly, if you ask people who do that work to be forthcoming about, moments they've had where they didn't like what they were seeing, and you ask them, what would you do in this situation? Most of the cops we talked to said that, people's boundary lines were set pretty far out. They would let a lot slide before they would sort of step up and actually kind of, voice in a public way, like their protest about something. And I think that there was a sense I got talking to certain people that there was certain cops that they almost resented being put in the position of having to be the one who would betray the institutional kind of bond. And I thought that was really interesting, that the idea of someone not so much even being at war with anybody else, but at war with like opposing instincts within himself. And I think that there's a big part of him that knows that this can't all slide, but that he deeply resents having to be the one who's in some ways taking the rap for opening the can on it. And I don't tend to try to want to resolve contradictions like that. I think those kinds of contradictions in a person are the most interesting things to me. And I think similarly for the film, I've never thought, I'm never that much interested by films that are trying to answer that question for you. I think if you walk out feeling unresolved about it, I think that's a successful. To me, that's a successful film. I never. My favorite films, I'd say, always like leave a lot of questions in your lap, so that you have to chew over the way these things balance out in you. I think it's a more provocative way to interact with people than to sort of pontificate, really. But
Barbara Van Cherry from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I was wondering if you've watched this in a room full of police officers and sort of what they said to you after, or what you felt as they maybe reacted to some of the scenes.
Was that?
I haven't.
I have. I screened the movie we surrounded ourselves with cops, and it grew the longer the production went on. And I was vigilant about that, because anytime I was setting up a shot and there were anything regarding questions about how the department, how a police officer would handle something, would do something, specific details about just even what would be inside a radio car, things like that. We had cops everywhere, so a lot of those guys we obviously became close with, and I went back to New York and I invited several of them to see the film. It was just us in the room, and they were very happy with it. And what I was most proud of, I think, was that they got in the end, because it deals with obviously the dirty side of the job. But what they walked away with, and I remember several of them saying this, they said in a weird way the movie's a celebration of cops, because it celebrates an honest cop and doing the right thing in the end, and they really appreciated that. And they also felt like the specificity of the film resonated in a way that was truthful to them.
One of the things that the movie is really about, we were talking about family up here, and it's about which family are you loyal to, your professional family or the family you have to care for, the family in your house. And I just wondered at which point when you were writing the film, you decided to try to make it about that schism, and how you guys decided to sort of act that out.
Well, it's a very interesting question, because that was the seed of the whole film began. There was like a couple of little seeds, and one of them was, when we grew up, I grew up in New York, and we always heard cops bleed blue. That was it. Cops bleed blue, cops bleed blue, blue wall of silence. And I thought it was an interesting idea if you took this, the notion of the cops bleed blue, because it's this family of the department, the fraternity of cops is a family, and then you take
especially a blood family. It was mostly like an Irish Catholic institution.
Yeah, exactly. And then you take a real family of cops that bleed red, and you put them in this blender, and they collide. What would happen? Where do your loyalties lie there? Do they lie to the department? If you're Ray and you're in the middle of cops bleed blue, family of cops bleed red, where do your loyalties go? And that was sort of the genesis of it all when I started thinking about this film. Though, how do we explore that in a way that is cinematic?
I mean, for you, you're really wearing your scar of your loyalty initially, and then you leave because of that.
Yeah, I thought the thing that was one of the things I liked in it was that I liked the notion that it's actually maybe a lot easier to tell the truth outside of your family. I think that the idea that the most difficult place to talk honestly about things is within your family was I thought a very true observation. That this guy, the most difficult arena to actually be forthcoming is with the people who are closest to him. I thought there was something right in that, but